Hey everyone, I'm Dave Caban. I am being joined by John Lapinski, RotoViz writer, and the two of us are going to go through here and do a quick little mock draft using the draft dashboard. The idea here is that he can throw out any questions that he would have as somebody that's only had a little bit of use with this tool. So let's do a 12-team league, set their league size to 12. Rosters are 16-man rosters, regular snake. We'll use RotoViz tiers. Let's just pretend that our draft is on ESPN. So we will pull up ESPN PPR ADP. All right. This league, John, it's going to have a quarterback, 2 starting running backs, 3 starting wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, kicker, DST, and then 11 through 6 will be on the bench. We can allocate our positional draft preferences. So we have 100% to allocate across the positions, and that's going to let the tool know the importance that we place on each position. Just to add a little more context, we'll generate a pick number here, and we are going to be drafting as the 8th team. Oh, actually, hold on. All right, let's see. What do we land on? We're going to be picking from the 3 spot. How do you want to break out our draft preferences?
Well, I think since this is a RotoViz tool here, we should be going 0 RB. So I mean, maybe a decent amount of wide receivers at the top there. That I think I like where we're at here as far as the 15, 30, 40, 15. That we want to make sure we have a decent amount of wide receivers, and we can worry about those RBs on the wire sometime later.
Right,
pick them up and take advantage of the chaos.
I like it. So I'm actually going to say, if we want to go really RotoViz, I'm actually going to get radical here, and I'm going to jump this up to 65.
Oh, let's do it.
So we're getting nuts there. So we're going to put that to 65. We'll take this down to 7. We'll take tight end down to 7. So see, it's good. We bring this up. I say that if you really want to go with a very heavy strategy to one position, you really jump it up. So running back, then, just to close this off, if we put that at 21, we'll be at our 100%. All right. So now we're going to do a mock draft. We're team 3. We'll come down here and we'll just call team 3 RotoViz. And now we get to have our little mock draft here. So we'll go over to the RV-tab. We're going to have the computer make mock draft selections. Now, you said that you have not mocked with this before, so I'm going to show you it's pretty easy. If you want the computer to mock draft, you just go up and you hit mock draft. It will make 1 pick. So we can see the first pick in this mock is Le'Veon Bell. He goes to the Patriots. The Jets are now on the clock, which you can see is signified right here. And you can also see that in this team position breakdown, they're highlighted in gray. So we also need to go to this team overview tab and select RotoViz. And now we'll be able to track along with our team here. So we hit mock draft. The computer is going to go ahead and it is going to select Todd Gurley. So we're on the clock. Not a surprise here. Our weighted preferences are pointing towards wide receiver. So let's take a look at them. You can see we have a very simple configuration going on right here. We have not filled in any of the custom metrics columns. I think that for John and I, who spend way more time than we should looking at fantasy football, we're probably okay with this view. So as you're looking at this, any questions on any of these tables or whatnot, or things I might be looking at?
No, I think that generally it's pretty self-explanatory. I think one of the more useful things I want to point out is in the top right-hand corner there, the tier breakdown of what's left there. Tier 1 shows you how many quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends are in there. And I think, if I remember correctly from the draft I did with this, that kind of counts down and shows you how many are left as they get selected. Yeah, I think that's super useful. That's something that during a draft you're going to want to keep your eye on, as you can see that going down and dropping there. And below that too, the panic picks of we were talking earlier about the difference of fast drafts versus slow drafts. Once you have these fast drafts, if you have a lot of practice drafting, you might be ready for all these picks. But I know a lot of us, if it's your first draft of the year, something like that, you're sitting there on the clock, you don't know who to take. Having that panic pick, if you set your draft up properly with your preferences, it'll give you guys that, worst comes to worst, hey, take this guy, and it'll get you get you going there real quick.
Yeah, for sure. So as we make this pick, I'm going to let you choose here. So I have to imagine we're going wide receiver. Tier 1 is Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr., and Keenan Allen, and that is based off the RotoViz tiers. Who you like?
I think we got to start with AB here.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. So to demonstrate, you could click on Antonio Brown anywhere you can find his name and press this draft button. Alternatively, you can start to type in here and you get a little drop down. You can go down, select Antonio Brown, hit draft, and now we will see what happens after we signify that he's been drafted. The screen will update. We're a little bit slow on my screen recorder, but you can see Antonio Brown pulls down here on our team overview. We can see we now have Antonio Brown, and there is one less starter in tier 1 of wide receivers. We're down to 4. You'll notice that he's no longer in the available players listing. So
Dave, I have a question real quick. Yep. So you had that draft button right next to the name search.
Yep.
I see another draft looking button up there on the top to the right of mock draft. Does that do the same thing, or is that something different?
That's a great question. This is why you're here. This draft button relates only to the name that you have entered into the name search. So if I put in DeAndre Hopkins, once we select that, you hit draft, it will move in DeAndre Hopkins. We'll see him get pulled in and drafted. Now that is different from you see he's pulled in now down here and he's gone from this listing. That's different. Yep. This button, what this does is whatever name is selected, it will draft that. So let's say that, you wanted to indicate in your draft, maybe you're not doing a mock, you're following around or following along with your live draft and Zeke Elliott gets taken, you highlight his name, then you hit draft. So yeah, that's a really great question. So that's the delineation between those two. And then also, if you want to let the tool know that you put in the wrong player on that last pick, you just hit undo, and it's going to go in and it will pull out Elliott. And now you can see that he's back there.
Gotcha.
Yep. So
if you're along the same lines here, if you're doing a mock and instead of having the computer make a pick, if you want to manually make a pick like we're doing here, and say, okay, I think that this is the way the draft is going to go. You can just draft players there specifically, and then switch back to hitting the mock draft button to let the computer make the pick. Yeah, absolutely. Another great thing to mention. So you can instruct the computer for every pick who that player is going to be. So like you said, if you say, you know what, I've played in this league a couple of years, I know this guy's going to take David Johnson, you can use this draft button and indicate that David Johnson has been selected. Then the other thing you could do, you're not up for a while. If you want to skip ahead 5 picks or 10 picks, if you're on a Windows-based machine, you press Control M to go ahead 10, Control N to go ahead 5. Depending on the settings on your Mac, you might either do Command N or Control N, and the same would go with moving ahead 10 picks. So if we want to move ahead 10 picks right now, on my Mac, I would press Control M, and if we wait, the average time is about 14 seconds, so it takes a little bit more than 1 second to pick, at least on my machine. It's going to go ahead. It's making those 10 picks right now. So the computer's doing a lot of things here. It's looking at how teams have already selected their players. It's looking at the quality of remaining players, and it's also looking at the drafting preferences that we set ahead of the draft for the teams that we're mocking against. So let me actually show that. I forgot to mention this. You can go over to the settings tab and you can go down here, and there are different configurations that you can choose to make the computer teams that you're drafting against draft in different ways. So you could put yourself in a running back heavy league, you put yourself in a mixed league or a balanced league. You select a preset and you hit select, and then it's going to assign percentages, much like we did up here, to the teams that you will be drafting against. And it's also worth noting that you don't even have to draft for a team. If you just wanted to watch a draft, you could just let this go ahead. And so to your earlier question, and stop me if I'm going too fast here. So we just told it to manually mock, or we told it to mock 10 at a time. Then we could go back in and say, all right, now Melvin Gordon is taken. We hit draft. That all making sense? Yep, definitely. Okay, so now we're up in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're up in 6 picks. So if we do control, or on my computer, Command N, it's going to go through our next 5 picks, and then we'll be on the clock. Quick question: Does it know when your pick is coming up? That if your pick was coming up in like 6 picks and you told it to make 10 picks, would just mock right through you? I guess so. You got to pay attention to where you are.
Do have to pay attention to that, and that's actually something that I realized I easily could have included, but I forgot to do that after I had released this year's version. So that'll probably get in there next year. But just a reminder, the team that's selected in this team overview tab gets highlighted in red up here. So that's how you can track along with where you are. So we're now back on the clock. From a weighted scarcity perspective, the computer is looking at the number of starters at each position in your league and the number of players that have been taken, as well as the quality of players that are available to come up with this weighted scarcity breakdown. So it's saying that right now, if you look at the quality of available players against the demand for that position, wide receiver is the most scarce. Naturally, we're focusing on wide receivers. Our weighted preferences are indicating that we should consider going with a wide receiver. So we'll toggle back to wide receiver, and we're now into the tier 2 guys. So there's Adam Thielen, Doug Baldwin, Stefan Diggs. Anything that you want to think about here before we would make our selection?
I mean, I know we were both talking earlier that we really like Diggs.
Yep.
That, based on that, I think we can go with him. So we would just click him in the menu there and then go up and hit the draft button, right?
Right, hit the draft button. Now, I should probably also mention, let's say that we wanted to check in on something else, right? Like, let's say that we wanted to look at the best tier that an RV ranker put these guys in. We could go up to this M1, find the drop down, go to RV high, and now we can bring in some more information once that loads. So you can see that even though some of these guys overall in tier 3, there were a couple that actually the highest tier Rotoviz tierer put them in was tier 2. We could also change how we're looking at that listing by changing tier to ADP. So just to give you a little more idea of how you can customize this. So we said we were going to go with Diggs. We'll click his name. We hit draft. And then if we wait, we will see him pop up into our team overview tab. Now there are other areas of the tool that you can look at. You can go over to view 5 and here's your standard draft grid. You can take a different view of this and you can toggle it to team rosters, and then you'll look at each team based upon how it's constructed. So you can see right now, the Bills went DeAndre Hopkins and Mike Evans, and the Browns have also gone 2 receivers with Julio Jones and Devontae Adams. There's some other elements in here that I've talked about in tutorials. We won't focus on those right now. So we're back up in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks. So we'll hit this mock draft button. And you'll notice that each time that a pick is made, that we're going to get slightly different percentages up here. Everything is going to update. Our panic picks are going to update. So let's keep cycling through till we're back on the clock and we'll see what information we can digest that's going to help us. So we start off Antonio Brown, Stefan Diggs. In true Rotoviz fashion, I'm assuming we're going to go with another wide receiver here. What say you?
Sure. I mean, let's see. Is Baldwin going to make it back to us here?
Yes, he did. Oh, I love that.
So, quick question here for you were just showing how you can put the RV high, RV low for the tiers, and some other metrics in there for the M1, M2, and M3. So each of those columns you could put a different metric in.
Yep.
That's populated from the custom metric sheet there.
Yeah, absolutely right. So we have this custom.
And you can put your own metrics in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So we have 3 columns that you can put in anything you want for a particular player. So maybe I just want to call like this target, and I want to say any player that we want to target in this draft, we're going to put an X next to. So I could go and find somebody like AJ Green, and I put an X next to his name. And then if we go over to the RV dash tab and we bring in target, and I'm assuming that I did get that right and put that next to, so actually I put that next to a running back. Let's see.
I don't remember who you put it next to. Let's see.
Let's see. So I had that next to,
somebody already drafted.
Somebody already drafted. Yeah, my bad. So let's put that next to AJ Green. Nice catch there. So we go back over to the RV dash tab, and now we go back to wide receiver. Did AJ Green already get taken too? All right, bad examples. We're gonna put let's put this on Adam Thielen. So we'll go down and we will find Adam Thielen. So the other thing I could do is I could do it like this, and I could type in Adam Thielen. And as anybody that's watched the other tutorials knows, I think that Mac is much better on PC than on Excel, especially for sorting and filtering. Anyway, so in Target we put an X. If we come back over to the RV dash tab, you can see that now we've indicated that Adam Thielen is a target. So there's a lot of things you can do there. And there's even a way to, if you have information in another Excel file, you can go over to the data import tab, which is right here. You can drop that in, make sure the data matches in our spelling conventions, and you can import that right into the tab. So to get back to the RV dash tab, you can sync this up with any information that you want in here, and it really helps you as you're going through your draft. So now one thing that I also like to do is if I'm on the turn, I like to look at this team position breakdown right now. We can see that, interestingly enough, the two teams in front of us have each drafted a tight end. They have not taken many wide receivers. This could signal to us that the two wide receivers that are in tier 2 are going to get taken. Now, naturally, we don't get to pick for a while, but let's say this was our pick before, where there was going to be those 4 picks between us. That would be an important piece of information to have. So let's say that we take Doug Baldwin. We draft him. He's going to get pulled in. John, if you're looking at this list of guys, any targets for you, like guys that you would want to keep your eyes on? If we look at this wide receiver list, there's Thielen, Hilton, Fitzgerald, Thomas, Robinson, Jeffrey, Smith-Schuster.
You know, I know you're not as high on him as I am, but Amari Cooper is a guy that has been going in the 4th round sometimes. Not usually the late 4th, but you know, if he made it back to our next pick, I'd definitely like to take him. So he's a guy I'd like to keep my eye on there. Awesome.
So what we're going to do is we're going to select the name Amari Cooper. We're going to hit this plus, and we're going to drop him into our watch list. So what this is going to do down here, it's going to keep Amari Cooper here, and if he gets selected by another team, his name will turn red. But this is just a way we can keep him in the back of our mind as this draft moves along. So let's go ahead. We'll do Command M, and you may have to do Control M on your computer. We're going to move ahead 10 picks and see if Cooper is still available.
I'm betting not, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll take a look.
After maybe 10 picks, he will be, but
I think that he could be there after 10. And the cool thing about this tool is, though it's looking at like very mathematical things to arrive at the players that get taken, it is randomizing things to a degree that's going to allow you to always have a different experience when you're drafting with this tool. So Amari Cooper is still there. So let's go through 5 more picks, and we'll see if he is going to be around, and then it will almost be back to us. And then there's just a couple more things that I want to show everyone watching this before we close down our quick little mock draft here. So Amari Cooper, he's still on the board. Now, one thing that we could do, there's other screens in here. There's one that gives you an idea of kind of lists out players based on upcoming ADP. Then there's also this table here that lets you workshop scenarios, and you can see every time you click this button, it's going to simulate the next 10 picks. And then you can look and see what are the odds that Amari Cooper is going to get taken. You can just hit this a couple of times to kind of get a sense of, you know, in those upcoming picks, is he going to go? You can see he's taken there, and you can see that the computer is expecting in this simulation more wide receivers to get taken. I recommend you hit this a couple of times so you can kind of get a feel of what the odds are.
I like that last simulation was expecting us to take him. It was apparently the computer is now sentient. It's listening to us. I got to admit, you did a bang up job with these tools here. That it can actually, you know, pass a Turing test. Apparently, you know,
somewhere out there, Denny Carter's mind just exploded. So we'll mock draft back to our pick. I also want to point out that regardless of what view you're in, The buttons at the top still work. There's an annoying, this is probably good that this happened. Really annoying thing in Mac Excel that sometimes it will not let you scroll. If you hit this view fix button up here, it will fix that for you.
Oh,
I dedicated,
that's a Mac thing, huh?
It's a Mac thing. I dedicated so many hours to trying to write some code that would prevent that from happening, but I could not do it. So we'll continue along here.
I thought you said you liked Excel better for the Mac than the PC.
No, I think I may have said that incorrectly. I loathe Excel on the Mac. And also you can see Cooper just got taken. He just got taken. So we'll remove him from our watch list.
I'm telling you, man, this thing's listening.
It is listening. It is listening. So it's back to us. Let's take a quick look though at our weighted preferences. This is interesting. The tool is now saying that we actually might want to consider pivoting to running back. If we try to make sense of that, a major reason for that is if you look at the teams around us, not a lot of that, there's still teams that need running backs. At this point, there's only 8 starters left to go and 4 guys in tier 3, 12 in tier 4. Wide receiver, though, it's imagining and it's projecting that more of those guys from the high quality tiers are going to hang around when we come back up at our next pick. So this actually makes sense.
Just real quick, those starters down there, that's counting the starters, starting slots in your and your opponent's lineups.
Yep.
Basically, like if each team needs 2 running backs, it's saying, okay, that's 24 running backs at 8 being left means 16 have been taken, is what that's telling me there.
Yeah, right. So this is basically giving you total starters in the league less what's been taken.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out, does that matter exactly how many running backs have been taken, or does it look at how many per team? That, for instance, the Steelers there have 4 running backs.
Great question. So the Steelers are contributing only 2 running backs to this starting thing. However, though, once we reach the point where the flex is going to come into play, though there's not anything here that specifically is indicating anything related to the flex. I left that out because, depending on your league, you might not have a flex, but the tool knows if you do have a flex and it's factoring that into the math that it's doing. So it is in the scarcity and the weighted preferences factoring in the idea that, if there is a flex that includes these positions, it's going to have to include that in the math, which I could go into in more detail, but it would take forever to explain.
Right. So that starter number, it looks like we've actually had 20 running backs taken, but only 16 of them are filling starting slots on teams currently, because we have a team with 4 and 2 teams with 3. So we have 4 running backs that are being flexed by those teams.
Okay.
So we have 8 running backs still that need to fill in starter slots.
Right. That's a great question. Great point. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on there.
Gotcha.
So if we look at this, I can understand now why the tool is pointing toward running back, right? Because at this point, there's only a couple of quality running backs left. We already have some wide receivers, and we're going to be back up in 4 more picks, at which point we could snipe one of these remaining wide receivers. We don't have a running back at this point, so I can understand why we will want to get one. So now we're faced with a tough decision here, right? Do you have to listen to the tool? No, absolutely not. If you're going in with a structural approach like 0 running back, feel free to go ahead with that, to disregard these weighted preferences when you feel it doesn't line up with what you're aiming to do. However, if you're not going to go with a structural approach and you're trying to maximize or optimize the positions that you're going after so that you're building your roster out, having the highest tiers at each position possible in a way that makes sense, you might want to consider pivoting to running back. So, John, if you were at this point in the draft, let's say that we're not necessarily going 0 running back, are you going to lean here towards that running back, or are you going to go for the wide receiver?
Looking at who's still left, I could still see going a wide receiver here, somebody like Allen Robinson, but let's see who's left at RB.
Right. So let's pop over there. So we can see right now it's Rashad Penny, Ronald Jones, Lamar Miller, and Tevin Coleman.
That's a tough one. I think I'm going to stick with 0 RB here. Run it out, grab a wide receiver, and keep going. What are the tight ends left, just out of curiosity?
So the tight ends that are left are Greg Olsen, Delaney Walker, and Evan Ingram. And this brings up an interesting thing to consider here, right? Like, depending on how you draft and the league that you're in, tiers are not equivalent across positions. Like for me, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 wide receivers and running backs are more important than even tier 1 tight ends. So that's something to consider. So it's interesting to do these comparisons back and forth. I think at this point, those tight ends don't stick out to me. So we really are between the running back and the wide receiver.
Yeah, we could wait longer on the tight ends. I think wide receiver.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's go with a guy that you're higher on than I am, and that's Allen Robinson. So let's draft him here. And he's going to pull into our team. And now you can see it's really pointing towards running back, which makes sense. We have a wide receiver in the flex, which we want. We have Antonio Brown, Stephon Diggs, Doug Baldwin, and Allen Robinson. But the thing that I want to show everyone now is if we go over to the fourth view in the tool, let's make our way over there. Let's say that John and I have finished this draft and we want to say, what would things have looked like if we hadn't gone with all black, all wide receivers in our draft flow? Well, we can go into this view. You click this could have drafted listing, and it's now going to show us every player that was available to us when we made each pick. So we could have, instead of Antonio Brown, went David Johnson. Instead of Stephon Diggs, we could have gone maybe Rob Gronkowski and we go with the tight end. And then perhaps we get back to wide receivers. So maybe we could have gone with Doug Baldwin. Let's say though we want to do things a little bit differently. Maybe we could have gone with Adam Thielen. And then at pick 46, instead we could have taken, maybe we go with, just a different receiver there. We're trying to build our team out a different way. Maybe we want to get pieces of high octane offenses and we go with Juju. And as you're filling this out, it's going to graphically give you a visual here of how that would have impacted the tiers of player that you were drafting. So the bigger bars mean, that the player had a higher tier. So in this case, it's saying that we could have had, in the configuration we went with, we had a player of a higher tier than our wide receiver 1, which was Adam Thielen in this other configuration.
I think this is pretty cool. It's also a second guesser's worst nightmare of after you finish, you go, shit, I should have taken that guy. That there's quite a bit of second guessing going on in there, but it is useful to kind of critique your own drafts and look at where you could improve. And again, that comes back to the points I've been trying to make about practicing and doing as much as you can. And I think this tool and this dashboard here really help you track what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that you and I we were just on a podcast that we just talked about. So I think that's a really good way to not only get the practice, but then to go in and reflect on your draft, which is one of the reasons I wanted to build this tool. It's all about getting organized, helping you to make efficient and confident decisions while you're on the clock, and also get better and practice drafting. Learn some of the mistakes that you make, some of the bad habits that you have formed, and just explore that. And there's a lot of data here. You don't need to digest it all, but I do think you can find a configuration that works with you. And it might seem intimidating at first. Spend a little bit of time with it. There's a really extensive guide in here that's going to overview everything you need to know. I've also put tutorial videos up at rotoviz.com and at ffdraftprep.com. John, thanks for helping out here, asking some questions. Any final things that you were curious about? If not, it's fine before we close down.
No, I think I'd just like to point out, though, the utility of those M1, M2, and M3, the custom metrics you can put there on your dashboard that, if you're drafting, dynasty players or something like that, you could throw in, a phenom index for your wide receivers that, we have all these great metrics over at RotoViz that if you pull off some of those metrics, and I know there's an import tool here, the data import tab on the bottom, where you can, throw those into a spreadsheet, bring them in here, and then have them, displayed there on the dash, as you're looking at them without having to reference anywhere else. I think you can do some pretty cool stuff with that now that I really see how that works, that's definitely something I'm going to be doing in the future, using that feature a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea here was to make something that has a base configuration of what I feel works with me and what I think would be helpful for beginner players. But if you're an experienced player, there's a lot of customization that you can do. You can also set keepers. You can have trades get factored into the tool. So there's just so many possibilities of what you can do. But anyways, we hope that this helps you get a better understanding of what the dashboard is all about and how to use it and answer some of your questions. If you do have questions remaining, shoot an email to rotovizexcel@gmail.com and we will help you out. All right. Thanks for watching this.